A new battle appears to be brewing between farmers in Western Canada and Ottawa. This one involves federal government workers trespassing on farmland in Saskatchewan to collect water samples. To talk about this in more detail is political reporter and Toronto Sun columnist Brian Lilley, who joins us once again from Toronto. Brian, what specifically were these government workers looking for?
Well, some of the initial reports said that they were looking for nitrate levels in water samples in a farm, area near Pence, Saskatchewan. This came to light for most of us after a tweet by Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe saying that he'd written to the federal government asking them to stop this, saying that the workers from Environment and Climate Change Canada were trespassing, that this was something that shouldn't be done. Now, Environment and Climate Change Canada says their workers were not trespassing, that they've been collecting water samples like this for a long time, that it's not related to nitrate levels, that they were trying to collect water samples for Health Canada. So a bit of confusion there, a bit of back and forth. According to officials with the Saskatchewan government, they first learned of this last Wednesday, and then they changed the law about trespassing in Saskatchewan by an order in council. That's an executive order by cabinet to include the government in right of Canada or persons in right of Canada, meaning a government worker could be considered trespassing. Now, it's a bit of smoke and mirrors. They could have been found trespassing regardless of this change, but they're obviously taking this seriously. Perhaps it's a bit of bluster from Scott Moe, but part of the ongoing heating up fight between prairie farmers, the governments that represent them locally, and the central government in Ottawa. As Sylvain Charlebois, the food professor, likes to say, farming in Canada is losing out to progressive urban voters who have a very different view of how the world should work. And there's a lot of worry that that's what's behind whatever these environment and climate change workers were doing on that farm in Penn, Saskatchewan.
Now, is there any news on the federal government's plans to have farmers reduce nitrous oxide emissions from fertilizer?
No, this is what some people are wrongly calling the fertilizer ban. It's not a fertilizer ban, even in its most horrific form. And I don't think this is a good idea, but it is a plan to say that they want to reduce emissions from fertilizer of nitrous oxide by 30% by 2030. Most farmers and industry people I talk to say, sounds great, but we can't do that based on how we're operating now without reducing fertilizer use. So right now, it's still a voluntary reduction. There is, of course, worry that it would become mandatory. The government has a discussion paper out that you can send your comments in. So I'd recommend anybody that is concerned about this, especially if you're a farm operator of any sort, send them in by August 31st. You have 1 week left. And of course, if you're interacting with government, make sure that you're not cursing, you're not yelling, that you're clearly explaining your position. Because as I've been speaking with farmers, they've been saying, look, we're willing to reduce our emissions because that means reducing our fertilizer use, but we're already doing the best practices. We're doing that in most places. We're trying to bring along people who aren't doing that. Fertilizer is one of our most expensive inputs, and but the government just doesn't seem to want to listen to those. And they say, whatever you're using now, cut it by 30% in the next few years. In torpedoes, so and so. They want an absolute reduction, and the industry is saying you've got to go in a different direction.
It just blows my mind how Ottawa's attacking our farmers, the bread and butter of society. I mean, without farmers, we don't have the food here, Brian. Now, more controversy coming from Ottawa this week over a federal contract given to a Montreal group to hold anti-racism workshops. Now, what's interesting, one was scheduled in Calgary in a few weeks, but the program was canceled over what many say are racist comments by the lead organizer.
Yeah, and I want to give a shout out to journalist Jonathan Kay and Mark Goldberg, who's a bit of an activist. He has a day job, but he's got this as a passion. They really were pushing this online, Twitter specifically, saying, "Hey, you guys gave this contract out. Have you seen what this guy's been saying?" And it percolated for a week or two in the online world, and then the minister heard about it and said, "Okay, we've got to investigate this." And then they eventually cut it, but it took a while, and it took longer than it should have. The contract was given to a group called the Community Media, I believe it's Community Media Action Center. CMAC is the short for it, and but the lead organizer was out there saying the most horrific things about Jews, the most horrific things about Black people, saying that French is an ugly language. Weird. He lives in Montreal. That and he used a derogatory term that we would all know, an amphibious creature, to describe French people, and said that those people have a low IQ of about 77. So it's often been described as this guy's anti-Semitic. No, he's more than that. And in his comments, um, Minister Ahmed Hassan, who's in charge of this file, rightly called them vile and xenophobic. I think that's the right thing, and I don't think this guy should have been anywhere near anti-racism training. I have lots of questions about that concept as a whole. I'll say the minister, got to the right spot. I'll say he should have gotten there sooner.
So, how does a contract like this go to someone who made such vile comments in the past?
A lot of mistakes along the way. This was a government grant of $133,000 that was given out in September 2021. What were we doing politically in September 2021? We were having an election. But just because the grant was given out then doesn't mean they applied then. These things take time. So it started out under Canadian Heritage. That's who funded this program. And that the minister then was Stephen Guilbeault, currently the environment minister. The minister in charge of diversity at the time, which announces such grants, was Bardish Chagger. She's no longer in cabinet. Well, since then, we had an election and we had a cabinet shuffle. Pablo Rodriguez is the heritage minister, and Ahmed Hussein had diversity and inclusion attached to his housing duties. Kind of a weird combination, but that's what it is. Nobody did the proper vetting. Nobody Googled this guy. Now, there have been attempts by the government to say, we want CMAC to explain how they hired such a fellow. Well, Laith Marouf, the man who made these vile comments, effectively is CMAC. He and his wife are the organization. They have some supporters, they have people on their boards, but the mailing address for the group is his home. The phone number for the group is his personal cell number that he was putting out online so that people could contact him when he was doing TV interviews with places like Press TV. That's the propaganda channel in English for the Iranian regime. This guy, a quick Google search would have fixed this. Liberal MP Anthony Housefather said that he took the vile comments. As soon as he heard about them, he took them to Minister Hussein and said, you've got to do this. And it wasn't until media questions started to arise, thanks to the work of Jonathan Kay and Mark Goldberg, that the minister said, we'll investigate. Then they said, well, it took time because the contract was with CMAC, not Laith Marouf. They are one and the same. So a bit of, covering your butt, I would say, is what the government's been engaged in. This never should have happened.
Brian, every single premier in Canada has been asking the Trudeau government for help in regards to health care, in particular, a funding increase. Why has Ottawa refused so far?
They've refused because Justin Trudeau likes to say that he will do things differently than Stephen Harper, but he won't. He won't actually do it. Before the 2015 election, he called what Stephen Harper had proposed, which was reducing the annual increase in healthcare funding to 3% plus inflation and population growth. He described that as a massive cut. He campaigned against the $36 billion cut that he claimed was going on, except that so-called cut didn't take effect until 2017. By the end of 2015, Justin Trudeau was in power. He could have changed it back to the 6% annual growth in health spending. He didn't do it. Instead, he told the premiers, you can take it or leave it. I remember speaking with Saskatchewan Premier, then at the time, Brad Wall, leaving a meeting very disappointed because he'd been led to believe it was going to be something different, and it wasn't. So this is a government that likes to say that they believe in healthcare, that they're the champions of it. They're not full and equal partners like they claim to be. And this week, their big showcase that they care about healthcare was to announce a chief nursing officer. Now, Trudeau supporters online cheered it and said, oh, this is exactly what we need. I don't know why, Hal. This is going to be a bureaucratic position. This is not a nurse that's going to care for a single person for a single minute. This is not a comment on the woman who's got the job. This is comment on the position, a bureaucratic position at Health Canada, an organization with 11,000 employees. They don't run a single clinic or hospital. They don't give anybody care. They're bureaucratic paper shufflers. And now we're going to add this chief nursing officer. I'm sure they're going to have a chief of staff or a top, executive assistant making a hefty salary. This position alone will have a salary of probably over $300,000 a year. On and on and on. It's empire building within the bureaucracy, which Trudeau seems to like, while denouncing premiers for not providing proper care.
MPs on the Commons Transportation Committee grilled Minister Omar Al-Gabra about serious problems at airports and land borders. Now, the minister actually said there was no evidence that the ArriveCAN app caused delays. Seriously?
Yeah, it's like he's being willfully blind. He could talk to the union that represents the Canada Border Services agents. Now, the Liberals love to say how much they support unions, they back unions. This union has been saying for a while, look, the only reason you've got over 90% compliance with the ArriveCAN app is because our members are the IT desk for everyone that shows up, and they've got their phone in their hand, and they don't have it filled out right. They're not sure how it works. It's been glitchy for them. This isn't just a case of seniors and people who don't speak English or French not being able to work it. Is I think we discussed last week. There are people who are tech savvy who've shown up, filled out everything. They're fully vaccinated. They have no symptoms, and ArriveCAN is saying go quarantine for 2 weeks. Well, all of these things are causing the backups at the airports and the customs halls. Then you look at the land border crossings, and any land border crossing that has serious traffic levels, they've got the same issues. It's a glitchy app that causes problems. And last week, when he was saying this, as he's before committee saying it, I went on the government's website. Government of Canada maintains a website that tells you the travel times out of Canada at land border crossings and the travel times in. I think there were some delays at Coots and in Surrey for leaving Canada, but everywhere else it was 5 minutes, 9 minutes. Coming back in, you could find an hour and 10 minutes out in Surrey, I believe it was. It was about 40 minutes at Coots. It was 57 minutes at different places, 47 minutes. These are long lines. To sit in line just to go across the border, if you've done it before, I've done it before. It's normally just snap, 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 and you're through. Maybe you wait 5, 10 minutes. That's normal. No, now it's 45, 50, an hour and 10 minutes. And what is causing that to get back into Canada? It's the ArriveCAN app. Tourism groups, chambers of commerce, border city mayors across the country have said this is a problem. The only people that say it's not a problem, Omar Al-Gabra and anyone who's a member of the Liberal Party.
Brian, the CPC leadership is just around the corner now, September the 10th. Let me ask you something. Is it still Pierre Poilievre's to lose?
It is, and here's the great unknown. The last I heard, now this is numbers that are about a week old, Hal. Last I heard, it was only about 40% of ballots had been returned to Deloitte, the firm that's collecting them, tallying them, and will deliver results to the Conservative Party on September 10th. Only 40%. Now, so there's that huge number of 675,000 memberships sold. That means 675,000 people can vote. Well, for 40%, that's still over or in around the area of 300,000. I'm doing math in my head while I'm talking, not the best thing to do,
Sure.
but it's still a significant number. It's going to be huge, but there's still a lot of ballots not out there. Will this lead to upsets? Will this lead to surprise? Probably not, but it's one of those, I don't know. Like we're sitting there wondering how many more ballots, because you've only got 2 weeks now. How many more? Actually, no, the ballots have to be in by Tuesday, September 6th. So you've got less time. How many ballots are sitting on kitchen counters, in a drawer, on a desk in an office? And people are saying, oh, well, I don't need to. Either my guy's not going to win or my guy's definitely going to win. There's a lot of those. And if it stays that way, there might be a rush at the last minute. But if it stays that way, who knows what kind of surprise we'll see. I still think Pierre Poilievre would win it, but does it take more than one ballot? Does it take two or three? Um, as I've said before, with such a complex voting system and now all these unknowns, it leaves a lot up in the air.
You know, we see a lot of attacks from Jean Charest online, specifically on Twitter, against Pierre Poilievre. So how would that relationship be repaired, should Poilievre win? And would Charest even stay with the Conservative Party?
Oh, come on, Hal. The attacks inside the Conservative Party started each and every time with Pierre Poilievre before anybody else got in. He was the first person to launch, and he attacked his opponents as either criminals or liars or not real conservatives, they're liberals before they even entered. It was part of his shock and awe campaign. So there's no way that Polyev or his supporters can complain about any attacks coming back his way because they have been far fewer than what Pierre himself has launched. It's been part of his strategy. And the reason for that is they watched that Maxime Bernier and Peter MacKay, the front runners in the last two leadership races, didn't win like they expected. And I've told you before, if you don't do very well on the first ballot, it becomes harder to win on the second, third, and subsequent ballots. So they've had this very purposeful strategy of attacking from the beginning. They're still attacking, although Pierre is turning more towards Justin Trudeau. You saw his breakfast with Justin video that's done very well online. As far as Jean Charest, look, I don't think Pierre Poilievre wants him in the Conservative Party. He's made it clear that he doesn't think Charest is a conservative at all. The problem is if he tells everyone who supported Jean Charest or Patrick Brown or Scott Aitchison that you're not a conservative either, then that becomes problematic for the party in trying to grow and win an election. One of my favorite sayings is winning in politics is about addition, not subtraction.
Political reporter and Toronto Sun columnist Brian Lilley, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you, Hal.